Bertha Paxton is one of 6 million Americans called mentally retarded. At the age of 15, after living in foster homes as a ward of the state, she was tested and evaluated at Johns Hopkins. There she was given an intrauterine device to prevent pregnancy. It was later removed at her own request. 4 years later, Bertha and members of the staff at Johns Hopkins talked frankly about the decisions they had made affecting her life. Rarely has a person labeled retarded given such penetrating insights into the questions that trouble her. Why is she called retarded? Why do people insist upon making decisions for her? Who has the right to decide when and if she can have children? What are the qualities of parenting? Does Bertha have them? All of us have to answer questions like these in our own lives. After listening to Bertha, what are your answers? What are your values? Thank you.
The things I must endure to keep your love, you know I'm strong enough to bear. But I'll be sweet and gentle when you need some tender love and care.
I am Bertha Paxton. I'm 19, and I'm from Clifton Forge, Virginia. I've heard all my life, you're retarded, you're retarded, you're retarded. No, I'm not. Let me ask you, what right did they have to fix it so I wouldn't be able to have kids?
Bertha had a 68 IQ, which is the higher educable retarded intelligence range.
The abilities of the child were limited.
But you see, she doesn't look like a retarded child as well.
Just because I can't read, does that make me retarded?
Whether you were or were not retarded, when you took the tests that we used, the Stanford-Binet and other psychological tests, you acted like you were. So then you become eligible for the diagnosis of retardation.
You know, you show block designs and you ask them to reproduce patterns. And in fact, her abilities did fall in a recognizable pattern of strengths and weaknesses that we see in children from excellent homes, from medium homes, from poor homes. So that we look at the variability and we say this is due primarily to the way her nervous system, the brain, has developed. When you tell her a short story, for example, and then you ask her to think about what it means and answer questions, that's, you know, one of her poorest skills, more like an 8-year-old or a 50 IQ child.
My role was to see her initially and to take a pediatric history and to do a general physical examination and a neurological examination. And these were done, or she was normal, let me put it in a physical sense. Mild retardation is that group of disorders that we know least about if we compare it, for example, to severe retardation that has some kind of chromosomal or genetic or metabolic defect. But children who are mildly retarded form perhaps 80 to 85% of the total number of people who are, quotes, retarded. There was a horrendous type of family situation, and most of the professionals that saw her, including myself, thought that the way she scored on her testing would suggest that in fact she hadn't even been given the stimulation in the home that would give her the wherewithal in order to do well on such testing.
See that gas station? That's where my dad works.
Working as a gas station attendant, earning $70 a week and having 10 children. I think a professional evaluating this situation, or anybody evaluating it, can't help but wonder how in the world do you manage.
I like Clifton Forge because it's small and you can find your way around. There's not too many people. And we got some neighbors, they don't like us because we were poor people. You know, we wasn't rich and sophisticated like them, so they didn't like us. There wasn't much I could do about it. Just stay and live with it. I mean, like, to me, I felt that I was just as good as they were. I just didn't have what they had. that causes cooties, fleas, you know. I guess we didn't have nice clothes like they did. They'd start as soon as we got on the bus teasing us. I was always glad when school was over I could come home and wouldn't have to listen to it. I don't know, I guess it hurt me because I couldn't look like the other kids. I remember when I was in the 7th grade, they'd just keep passing me on news, you know. They wouldn't keep me there and try to help me. They just said, well, you can go on out and play. There's nothing we can do for you. So I went out and played. I figured why? They didn't care, so why should I?
The worst thing in the world for a youngster that is an underachiever is to be rejected by her or his peer group. See, this is a real blow to them. We feel we've taken Bertha as far as we can as a 3rd grader, that it would do more harm to Bertha to keep her right here another year, add to her frustrations, than we send her to another grade. That's social promotion.
It's not really retarded because you can't read. If something bugs you, you can turn yourself against it. And reading has always bugged me, and I imagine it's bugged Bertha also. But that don't make a person stupid, no. I can't agree with that. It don't make a person retarded. My sisters, they tried their best. They didn't have the best suitable clothes everyone else had, or the shoes. They didn't look like a queen of America. But my father and mother tried. That was all expected of them.
It hasn't been no easy life. And money-wise, it's been close. But as far as the children, I've done as much as I could for them. I think if any way I could, I helped them.
I admit my sisters never had very much of a home, because my father ain't got very much a job to give us the best home in the world. My first job was on a Pepsi-Cola truck at the age of 11. I started working there, and I'd skip school to do it. Most of these people run to the welfare for this, that, and the other. I'd die before I went to the welfare for something.
The major problem, I think, was that they would go downtown and stay at the ice house or in various stores trying to keep warm and not go to school. And the probation officer, after so long a time, picked the children up and brought them to the agency, and that's how we got custody of the children at that time. I know all of them, really. I know Norman. Norman has been to George Junior Republic, of course Russell's home, and Linda is with Mrs. Parker, which is the foster home that Bertha was with. Linda has much the same problems that Bertha has, very much the same problems. And Kathy is in a foster home here in the county, and she does very well.
We're talking about you. Oh, it's good. It's not bad. In between.
Then we have a smaller girl, Betty. She's about 11 now, and she's in a foster home in the county and does very well. But we have been pretty much involved with the children ever since Bertha was a child. Bertha must have been about 12 or 13, and she seemed to take a responsibility around her own home as far as the other children were concerned.
Me and Bertha used to roll around together all the time. Bertha was her mother. Bertha this, Bertha that, Bertha this. Bertha practically raised them. Everywhere Bertha went, the kids went with her.
The rest of them were little, and it was really my responsibility to get up and do it. It was just something that had to be done, It was hard, yes, I must admit it, but I did it. I didn't complain.
Certainly her appearance and her social manner, the way she answers everyday type social questions is good, which is sort of unexpected in view of her background, her social background. One would expect her not to be as good in these little social areas as she was. We felt that she possessed many abilities, could learn a useful vocational type skill, I understand that when she was here, she helped out with the children in the playroom.
I think everybody ate too much turkey.
Society, visiting nurses, social agencies. Society has to then take the responsibility of helping children like Bertha who can't do it on their own. Bertha can care for a child, love a child. However, she will need some supervision.
But there are other areas that we're more concerned about in terms of parenting, a sense of following through, stick-to-itiveness. And this is the area where I think this girl falls short.
She would have certainly not been allowed to keep the child, probably because she wouldn't have been able to take care of it. I think if Bertha had had a baby and could not have kept it, that, it would have been very bad for her, because she needed desperately somebody to love and something to be her own, and that would have been it.
I mean, it's stupid. You all look at me and say, well, I don't think she would know how to raise a child. I don't think she should have him. But how would you all know? Are y'all me?
Unfortunately, I think it's been a general feeling of the professionals that kids like this either cannot be trusted or can be taken advantage of.
We knew, purely and simply by observation, that she was a pretty attractive girl, and that if something isn't given to Bertha to protect her from conception, then I think she would eventually have intercourse with someone, and I think she would conceive.
However, the question of mandatory sterilization comes up, and this is a very touchy issue.
There's no question that when you have, let's say, a severely retarded child who's got a great deal of brain damage and problems with muscles that arise from brain damage, or the child is so severely retarded that she can't even maintain any type of hygiene, then the indication then for a sterilization or for a hysterectomy is very much easy to recommend. Now, when you get into this kind of nebulous group of individuals that are normal, yet slow, if you like, intellectually, if you ask the question, should 14% of the population be sterilized, then I think the answer to that is, of course, no.
I felt that this was an opportunity to do some very important preventive work with Bertha, because if this pattern were continued, her children would be in the same situation that she was.
Dr. Howell and myself talked to Bertha for some time after we'd had the staffing conference, and I think the suggestion of an intrauterine device to protect her was a reasonable suggestion.
Okay, let me ask you, what right did they have to fix it so I wouldn't be able to have kids? I mean, I'm a human being. I should be able to have kids, right?
Essentially, they were saying to you that they didn't trust you by putting that IUD in.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason that the IUD is used is, that's a form of birth control that's retractable, that you can remove it and the person is no longer sterile.
How would you like for somebody to take your daughter and do that too? What would you feel about it? No, I want you to tell me. How would you feel about it? If it was your daughter, they did it too.
Well, I don't think they could do it to my daughter without my permission.
Right, and you all were supposed to have had my parents' permission too, and you didn't bother to get that.
You were a ward of the state then. You didn't have to get your parents' permission. I could just sit here, bold-facedly say, we didn't have a right to do it.
And you're right, you didn't. You didn't have the right to do it.
Sometimes putting the people through that process don't think of the patient as an individual person, and just everybody does it.
in our own way, we felt that we were protecting her because she was a child. If you ask me that same question now, I'm not quite sure what my answer would be.
How would you feel about it? If it was your daughter, they did it too. I mean, I'm a human being. I should be able to have kids, right?
Could you comment on...
The Kennedy Foundation has brought together a group of people of different professions and points of view to discuss significant human issues the film raises. They are Mrs. Marjorie Mecklenburg, President, Minnesota Citizens Concern for Life, George Tarjan, MD, Professor of Psychiatry, Mrs. Mary Robinson, Executive Director, Martin Luther King Parent and Child Center, Margie A. Chapman, National President, Intercollegiate Association of Women Students, William G. Bartholomew, MD, pediatrician deeply concerned with the problems of the retarded, Arthur J. Dykes, Ph.D., Professor of Population Ethics, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, Executive Vice President, the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation. We hope that their discussion will help sharpen your own perceptions of the crucial questions that Bertha asks and society must answer.
If she was going to...
Well, did not Bertha question whether or not she was mentally retarded herself in that film? This bothers me, and I wish that we could speak to this issue because, see, I'm wondering how she got labeled mental retarded, you know.
When you talk about a social situation, it's some social agent or usually a set of social agents who move in and impose the labeling.
The school children, the principal, the teachers, here's someone that's having difficulty, here's someone that's being thought of differently. There are a whole series of things here that contribute to a label which in principle have nothing to do with the ability of this child, the native ability of this child.
You know, very few school systems of the larger ones go about with a big net and try to trap individuals on the basis of mere IQ alone.
Oh, but they will do that.
They
will
There's
set
a
up
lot
their
of
big
testing
net.
going on in the city
They give
schools.
group achievement tests, and if you fail your group achievement test, then you see the school psychologist. And if the school psychologist, when you see her, if you fail your Stanford Binet or your WISC or your RAD achievement test, then you can be labeled.
But I would forever debate anybody using an IQ cutoff point for social decisions. The adaptation of the person, the assets of the person are of greater, not only of equal, but much greater importance than some number that is assigned on the basis of a single or two or three tests.
It's not just the label, it's what happens after the label is put on. If we had a system where it wasn't a social stigmata to be labeled mentally retarded, if we had a society in which the retarded were accepted as part of the community, then we'd be better off.
It seems to me that one of the basic problems in this whole area of quote-unquote mental retardation is the whole problem of stereotyping these people in the sense of the job capacity or functional capacities that they can fulfill. Why do we have this whole syndrome of credentialism in the United States? A number of my peers who don't necessarily have the tremendous experience that you would have are really taking an introspective look at the whole area of social sciences, all sciences, in terms of what are our, what is objectivity in this field. And I think some of them are saying that psychology, the social sciences are really in a very embryonic stage, and that we must question what is norm, and we must question what kind of values, or even the whole process of assigning a value to deficiencies, quote unquote, or assets.
I think that really raises, I think, a very important ethical question here today, and that is, when you look at Bertha, some people would say, at the age of 16 or 17, she should be fitted with, she should be given rather contraceptive devices, that she isn't mature enough or she isn't old enough to make the decision to be a mother.
I know of cases, and I have to say it like this, I know of cases where young ladies who are not given a choice, but are immediately, told that they can have an abortion and what can happen immediately after so that they will not have another child or even become pregnant. I'm saying that it's not IQ, that it's economics, that it's class, that it's race. I'm saying all of this. And I think it's criminal to have this kind of thing happen to groups of people, who are unfortunate enough not to have people who can support them in retardation, if indeed they are retarded. We've talked about social agencies, the educational system, the community. Well, who is the community? Who is the educational system? And I think that we must make a concerted effort to involve the parent back in the lives of youngsters, to the point that they know what's going on, so that they can give a proper consent, for whatever has to happen. I think there should be a collaboration, and I think that we have just, in many instances, removed the parents. You see,
as well as the child, the individual.
As Bill Hershey
Bertha,
said, you're a
15
ward
and
of the
9.
state. Why was she a ward of the state? Why weren't the parents there too?
Had some input in that decision.
I mean, that's an interesting social question, isn't it?
This was not treated as a family. In other words, this girl was treated as an individual rather than as a part of a family.
Certainly at that point.
But perhaps legally they were correct, but
legally
in terms of human rights,
they probably were correct, and I think they were correct, but that contains no prohibition against working with a parent in spite of the legal judgment.
But you see, my question is, I wondered if she had been of high economic status, whether or not they would have made an effort to bring that parent in.
They probably. You see, I'm bothered essentially, one gap in our discussion that somewhat bothers me, because Bertha happened to be white. We overlook a very significant aspect, namely the implication of a large number of these youngsters of broad social attitudes that mix, whether you mix the IQ or the mental retardation label with a very basic and tragic social phenomenon, essentially, as racism, that I think has to be considered in this context. But we conjure up Bertha's image, and she is a freckle-faced, red-haired little girl, but this misery that befalls Bertha befalls a large number of minority youngsters in the United States also. And I picked up in the film an important issue that ought to be discussed. I saw no indication that Bertha's moral code, quotes, that is, vis-a-vis sexuality, was not one that would have given pride to some other girls with 60 higher IQ points. And I would have quite readily relied on her judgment in this part, even though she had poor judgment in many other areas. I saw no evidence in the film anywhere that she was either promiscuous. The promiscuity probably raised the terrible flag in the minds of those who gave her care much more than in Bertha's mind.
Right, she asked, why can't I be trusted?
That's right.
And that's a very important element in their lives, isn't it? For people to trust them that they're going to do the right thing and not
Okay, I'm the county social worker. You're saying to me, wait till Bertha gets pregnant with her first child, then we'll put the IUD in. Is that what you're saying?
No, I would say essentially that why are you convinced that Bertha will become pregnant illegitimately?
I'm not convinced. I don't know. But she could get hurt because they're taking advantage of her.
Well, so one of the questions here is, again, is she someone that should be singled out as one who can't make the choice?
What about
you
the
have
boys
to
at
make
school?
the choice for her. That is, do you make the choice for the Berthas? What warrant do you have for assuming that you have to make the choice for Bertha? It'd be one thing to ask her about the IUD and see if she wants an IUD and why not, and then decide it on the basis of her say-so.
Even if you do ask Bertha, and she say only 15, which she was at the very beginning of her treatment, and say it, even assuming that she might say, yes, I want an IUD, do you feel that those kind of measures should be permitted to teenagers at that age?
Well, can you ask, can you rely on the judgment, number one, of a 15-year-old to make that kind of decision? How much input does she have, whether she's mentally retarded or not?
I would suggest that when you're 15 years of age, whether you're mentally retarded or not, you're really too young to get IUDs or contraceptives or whatever else.
My husband's worked in a drop-in clinic where you see teenagers come for help, and they need a whole range of services, and they are alienated from their parents the schools, nobody has picked up and helped them with their own personal problems. And here is a physician who's worked all day long, goes down there to volunteer his time, sees maybe 15 girls whose whole lives are, all of them are so mixed up, and this is the best we have to offer.
And why is it that young people assume that they are making the choice when they go to a professional who definitely influences their decisions and who plays the role of parent?
One of the things that we haven't looked at here, though, in regards specifically to Bertha, is her own feelings. Why does she want a child? Why do young people go to gynecologists asking for IUDs, contraceptive devices? There's a need there that is not fulfilled, and it's not fulfilled in the parental experience or the family experience, which these children, teenagers, juveniles have had. So why are they doing this? That's another area that you have to look at.
You want to find out the answer, pick up the phone, call the mother, say, listen, your daughter's sitting here, she wants birth control pills. Okay, doc.
Let's just say Bertha is smart enough to make the choice. But let's just ask ourselves again the basic question of whether at the age of 15 she comes to your office, or the age of 16 she asks for it, and you call up the parents and they say, doesn't that mean more that we made a terrific, that we're a terrific failure in terms of educating children and their parents to parenthood in this country than the fact that we want to make the answer, here's another pill?
Oh, absolutely. If she says, I want to have children now, that's a separate question. What are we going to do? Here's a 16-year-old girl. She wants a baby. That's why she's having sex. She wants a baby. She doesn't want to get married. She wants a baby. I want a baby to have for my own. I saw this problem every day in Baltimore. Okay, what should I say to her?
I would say that you ought to do vis-a-vis Bertha that which you would do vis-a-vis other children who are not exactly like Bertha. Because in this particular single area where it came to responsibility for children, when it came to responsibility for being competent about dealing with children, when it came apparently to judgment as to sexual behavior, Bertha was probably most outstanding.
I'd like to raise a question as to whether or not society has the right to determine, because Bertha has been labeled mental retarded, whether or not she should have a child or not.
Well, there's some fear that because she's so very attractive, that she'll go out and get pregnant, she'll have a baby, she won't be able to, she'll be on welfare, and then the welfare people say it's the first baby, and then there'll be a second, and then there'll be a third, and she's not married, and isn't this a terrible problem, and shouldn't she therefore be fitted with an IUD?
So somebody wants to play the parent, see? Mm-hmm. Somebody other than the parent wants to play the parent.
No,
okay,
they feel they're
involve
protected.
the parent. That's a cop-out. Involve this set of parents. I did the best I could with my kids. I've done everything I can. Okay, involve them in your decision. All right, they say, no go, you aren't doing a thing to my daughter. Now what are you going to do?
Is procreation a basic fundamental human right? And are there times when we can take that right from a person or control it, whether it's a minor, whether it's because they're mentally retarded? Is this a basic right? Does it depend, is it conferred by parents? Can they deny the right for their child to procreate by saying, all right, that this child must have, I say they should have an IUD or they should be sterilized. Do we turn this over to parents? Do we turn it over to professionals? Or is there some basic human right involved here for the individual themselves to decide? And what role do we play in society as professionals, or do parents play in helping regulate that right?
To me, the interest that society has is in furthering freedom. And Bertha is not going to have much freedom if the decision is to sterilize her at age 15 because she's mentally retarded. That's no freedom. Freedom, in this case, is not interfering with her in this way, recognizing her as an individual and as a member of family.
Yeah, but
nor may she be free if she has a baby at 15. Okay, she's 15 years old, she goes out and gets herself pregnant accidentally, and she's had a baby
She's
now.
exercised her right, but she's assumed a big responsibility.
Oh, hell yes, and
right.
she's maybe less free than she'd be with her damn IUD in.
Well, that may be, but now the question there is, do you think that you can just simply say on the face of it that for Bertha and others like her and for persons that age that she's made a mistake?
to have a baby?
Yes.
At age 16? With her judgment and capability and financial income and support and job?
Well, that's
Hell
an
yes,
issue
it's
here.
a mistake.
That's an issue here, yeah.
Well,
That's
then
why
you
I'm
feel
raising
it's
the
a
question.
mistake.
Hell yes.
Why?
For a 16-year-old unsupported
why.
girl to have a baby is not a mistake.
I didn't say that. I just asked
Are you?
why.
You're talking about parents and educating them and how to raise their kids and how we're going to prevent these problems through parent education and asking that question. I don't understand it.
Well, I'm asking
Nina.
you, has society, the reason I ask you, I'd hope that you would say, has society done what it is supposed to do for that mother and that child who gets itself pregnant at 16? That is what I'm asking.
not talking about what to do after the event, okay? Let's talk about that. How are you going to prevent it? You're going to depend on her parents? Are they going to prevent her from becoming pregnant? If she becomes sexually active, let's say she does. Right now she's not, okay? She becomes sexually active and she wants to have a baby.
Well,
Well,
I'd
you're
like to say
assuming-
yes, because after all, parents are responsible for their children through the age of 17 in this country. I mean, they take all the liabilities. Why suddenly, when it comes to sex, must they be taken out of the picture, and then you say to the child, now you make your own mind up. Then you say, well, the parent is missing or the parent doesn't care. Then what do? Then I think that the community has to come in and provide some alternatives. But I don't think the answer to it is for the doctor to say, there's nobody that cares about this girl, so I'll pop in a few pills. Is it a medical problem? I think there's a real question whether
there's
it's
much
a medical
more
problem.
to
It's
it,
really a
and
social problem, isn't
Right.
it, Dr. Dyke?
I agree.
It's not a medical decision, and it's not a decision. It's not a decision that I think anyone is in a position to make alone. No parent, no single individual should make procreative decisions on their own.
And I do not think it's the right of those professionals who were involved to make that kind of decision without involving her parent and other people who could have helped make that decision. I just feel it's wrong.
There's a lot of sterilization that goes on of the mentally retarded. I'm glad that they
That is worse.
thought of, yes, right, that's worse. I'm not condoning the insertion of the IUD at all. I'm just saying that I want to commend them for making the distinction, because there is a distinction, and young people ought to recognize that if they're consenting to voluntary sterilization, that's irreversible. An abortion is irreversible. You can't bring that child back to life. And you know, don't make decisions like that lightly, even though you have the chance in a society where we're pushing this.
For a lot of young people would resent your statement that they don't have the right to go and get sterilized, that they can't go to a clinic and make this decision for themselves at the age of 16 or 17.
No, I think other people got to be involved in this. It's too momentous. Sterilization is irreversible. Let's bear that in mind. And IUDs should be negotiated. Those are my points. Sterilization should not be simply negotiable. That's what I mean by supporting procreative rights. So that people don't come to marriage at 21 or at 30 and find they can't have children.
Okay, but let's take Bertha now, a 21-year-old, not when she was initially evaluated, but now, here, today. And she's 21 years old, and she says, I want to get married and have a family. I have no objection if she can find a guy to help share her life with her. But I might discourage Bertha from having children. Now, I wouldn't prevent it, but I might tell her, listen, Bertha, I know this seems like a tremendously attractive idea to you, and it is because you're a woman and because you have those motivations.
Why would you try to discourage her?
Because I don't know that she could, with her impaired judgment, provide for her children any better than could her mother.
But are we talking about the physical necessities, or are we talking about the emotional?
Both.
And the ethical kinds of
Both.
things she could do? It seems to me that she has that basic right to have children. That's the most important right Bertha has. If you take that away from her, you've taken away one of the reasons for her existence. I've had a girl who is working now in my house. She has a 63 IQ. She's just gotten married. She's had a baby. She's so happy. She's pregnant again. Now, she has some problems. I'm trying to work with her. But the point is that there may be a lot of other Berthas in the country that maybe don't have this kind of help. But that's the obligation, it seems to me, of the community. They ought to be able to provide schools. They ought to be able to provide basic family incomes. If Bertha has a daughter and she can't read, then they ought to provide good reading clinics for that child. They ought to provide, if Bertha wants to work part-time so she can support it, they ought to provide those kinds of jobs. We have a responsibility, because the community does, to help Bertha to be a parent and to be a mother and to have a full, complete, humane life. That's the reason for being, isn't it?
it takes a lot of tenderness to make the wheels of love keep spinning round. I know it takes a lot of tenderness to make the wheels of love keep spinning round.